Hello again, Rochester. This is Michael Wojcik with an Our Town Legislative Rundown. We're taking a look at what's going on in St. Paul and how it affects our community here in Rochester. Last week, we took a deep dive into what the priorities were for Olmsted County, and this week we're going to talk a little bit about the school district and what our schools are looking to get accomplished in this year's legislative session. As mentioned, last time, there's about a $7.7 billion projected budget, so there's a lot of talk of tax cuts and additional investments in other areas, so we're going to focus on what some of those possibilities are as they pertain to the schools. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that the schools face. You might know that the Olmsted County boundaries have been the same since the 1800s. The city of Rochester, we understand where the city boundaries are, and they have been growing as the city has been growing as well. But school district boundaries are a whole nother thing, and it's not necessarily intuitive of how they were created. This comes into play when school districts try to plan for their futures. The city of Rochester, as it grows to the northwest, is actually increasingly building homes that will fall in the Byron School District. And that's a challenge from Byron's standpoint in terms of getting busing to access there efficiently, and also in terms of Rochester in terms of planning for the future, because a portion of our growth is not going to fall in the district. At the same time we're growing into Byron's district that way. The Rochester School District actually has parts of the district that are in Wabasha County, so we actually bus a lot of kids past other districts to bring them into ours, and you can imagine that it creates a lot of logistical concerns. Now, every level of government complains about unfunded mandates, and that's true of cities, counties, and school boards as well. I can tell you from serving parts of 3 decades on the city council, there is no job more thankless and more difficult to do than being a school board member. They hands down have the hardest time, and part of the reason for that is, for all the challenges of city and county government, we get to set our tax levy. That's not the case with the schools. The schools become entirely dependent on the state, and some of those formulas are not necessarily fair to our district, and it creates incredible challenges, and we'll see that in terms of some of the priorities that the Rochester School District are asking to see addressed at the state level. I'd like to thank school board member Julie Workman for taking the time to get me some information about Rochester School District's priorities at the state level. There's 4 of them that they laid out. First one is an increase in the per pupil funding formula. That is, they're asking for 2%, which, as you know, is well below inflation right now, but then they're also asking going forward that that figure be indexed to inflation. Inflation has really cut the amount of funds that schools have at their disposal in the last couple of decades. One of the challenges Rochester and other schools face is a lot of times when it comes to poverty numbers, that depends on self-reporting for things like free and reduced lunch, and we don't always get complete and accurate results as a result of that. They're asking for new ways to measure poverty within local districts. They're looking to investigate and possibly expand P-TECH statewide. It's been successful here in Rochester. This is a program transitioning kids into professional and technical roles, with companies like IBM and Mayo supporting the program here locally. And finally, there's more work to be done on community schools, which is the idea that we have these tremendous assets around the community, but they're not necessarily available to the community, particularly those most in need in the after hours, and we can be a leader in the community school space. This is especially important when you see organizations like the YMCA closing down and the impact that that's having on kids as well.